Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We begin in the name of God, in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. And we ask for peace and blessings upon our beloved messenger and his family and companions. So thank you. It's an honor to be here. Again, I think 8 years on one campus, as Brother Riyad mentioned, makes anybody a Buckeye for life, no matter where else you go or what else you do. So it's always fun to come back and see how things have changed. We didn't have this beautiful union when I was here a long time ago. We had kind of the old place, but it was still very much like home. So a few years ago, I was with my family, and we were driving to South Carolina, to Hilton Head for a family vacation. And I was driving, my husband was sleeping in the side beside me, 2 kids were sleeping in the back. It was a rented van, so it was a really big van, and I wasn't really used to driving it. And if you've ever driven through like West Virginia and stuff, there's lots of curvy roads, huge trucks, fast traffic, and it was raining. And on top of all that, I was about 4 months pregnant, so I was a little bit off, just didn't feel, centered, and then I got this big boat of a van that I was driving, and it was pouring down rain. And it's just it was a little uncomfortable as it was driving that way. And so I was listening to a lecture on the CD while I was driving down, and the Imam started talking about the Prophet Nuh and the story of Noah during the rain. Now, of course, we all know the story of Prophet Noah, of Prophet Nuh, right? He preached to the people of his time for hundreds and hundreds of years, and most of the people didn't believe, and then Allah was going to drown them all in a massive flood. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about the commands to Prophet Nuh. Okay, so if you remember back to, so the commands, so one of the commands was to build the ark, right? It was revealed to Noah, construct an ark under my construction, under my eyes and my inspiration. And then Prophet Noah was commanded to collect all the animals, right? Place on board this ark a pair of each species. And the verses of the Quran are given to you. So Prophet Noah was commanded to get on the ark with all the animals and all his family, and then the few people who believed in him after all those years of teaching. And then the Quran talks about the ark afterwards as well. Okay, the Quran says, so the ark floated with them on the waves, towering like what? Do you remember? What were the waves like? There's this particular word that the Quran uses to describe the height of the waves and the size of the waves and how intimidating the waves were. Like mountains, okay? It was like mountains. So at that time, we were actually driving through the mountains. It was pouring down rain. I was in this big boat of like an ark-type van, and it was just really, really scary. And I just was looking to the sides of me, and I was thinking, man, if there were waves of water that were as big as these mountains right now, I would be totally crushed. And it really just, sometimes how some teachings just kind of imprint on you at the right time. And so I really got it. And the scholar was talking on the CD about how that ark would have been just like a matchbox. And if anything hit it, would just be like matchsticks and all that water. And what he was saying is that, if you really think about it, could Prophet Noah, by himself or with a few other people, have really built an ark that would protect him from those types of waves and mountains? What do you think? No. And I got it. You could tell how big those mountains are. So who saved Allah and who saved Noah and who saved the ark? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? It was Allah's blessing and Allah's care that saved the ark, not the effort of Noah, or not the ark itself that he even went to all the trouble to build. We just kind of saw what it looks like here, possibly somebody's rendition in this previous picture. But again, this type of a wooden entity, in terms of that type of power and force of nature, would not be able to stand up. So the teaching was that Prophet Nuh didn't save himself by building this ship. It was only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who saved him, right? Okay, so once we're kind of on this idea, then the Imam went on to ask the next question. Why? Why? Now, if it wasn't the ark that saved him, and it wasn't the effort of building it, and that was just not even necessary, Allah didn't need that ark to save Noah, or save Noah, then why did he have him go to all the trouble of building the ark? And why did he tell him, go collect all these animals? I mean, they were in an area where there was no water. Prophet Noah had endured hundreds and hundreds of years of the townspeople not believing in him, being angry with him, taunting him, and now he's building this ship where there's like no water, and the people are coming by and they're just like totally, you know, berating him, thinking he's off his rocker, and it's just kind of a humiliating experience. And then you have to go and find all these animals and do all this stuff, and it's not even what saves you. So the Imam went on to ask that question, why? Why didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just, you know, tell Prophet Noah, okay, get in this area, we're going to put all the animals in the area and the good people, and we're going to lift them up on a cloud and flood the ocean under them, and then put the cloud down, and you guys can go on and live, and we'll repopulate the earth. Why go to all the effort of doing this ark stuff? What do you think? What? We all know the story. Every kid knows the story. Every Jewish kid knows the story. Every Christian kid knows the story. Why?
He's teaching mankind that, you know, a prophet, like a holy person, you know, I don't know, I guess if he needs to put effort in for something to happen, then, you know, throughout like your life, you're going to have to put effort in for everything.
Awesome. Did everybody hear that? Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to know, He wanted that lesson to be inscribed for all of humanity, for all time, that we need to put effort in, right? That we as human beings have to do our part. If we put our effort in and do those first steps, then the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come after that, and then He will bring us success. But we have to do whatever we can do, and then with that effort, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward it. So that's what we needed to do. That's what we needed to learn. And even with little efforts, if we can trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's we can trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take our efforts and make great things happen if it's His will. So let's look at another example. This is from the time of Prophet Musa, peace be upon him. So when Prophet Musa and the Bani Israel were finally leaving and fleeing from Egypt, if you remember, the Pharaoh gave them permission to go, and then the Pharaoh changed his mind, and then the Pharaoh was pursuing all of them in his army, and they were running, and the people were scared, and then in front of them came what? What body of water? The Red Sea. So in front of them was this big body of water, the Red Sea. And behind them was Pharaoh, and all his armies, and the people were really scared, and they didn't know how they were going to get out of this situation, right? They didn't know how they were going to be saved. But Prophet Musa trusted in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He trusted that Allah would help them. And by what process did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help come? Did Allah say, you know, as we talked about, He didn't say to Noah, okay, I'm going to lift you up and flood the earth and put you back down. Did Allah say to Prophet Musa, okay, stand back and watch this miracle. I'm going to part the sea for you. Did He say that? No, what did He say? What was His command to Prophet Musa? I'll save you, don't worry. Let me do it. What did He say? What did He say? There's clues now. Yeah. He said, strike the sea with your staff. Hit the water with your stick. Okay, what do you have around you? What do you have? You've got the stick in your hand. Strike the sea with your staff. Okay, now let's think about this. Okay, Prophet Moses here. There's a huge body of water. There's Pharaoh and his armies, and he's got a stick in his hand. I mean, is it really the hitting of the stick on the water that makes the sea part? I mean, does anybody believe that? Is that true? No. But even then, Allah didn't say just, okay, relax, and I'll do it. He told Musa to do whatever you could do with whatever you had. You've got a stick in your hand. Okay, strike the water with it. Strike the sea with your staff. And then what happened? The sides parted, each side, like a mighty mountain, the Quran says. So we know what happened then, right? Bani Israel were taken across. I mean, they went across in safety, and then as Pharaoh's armies pursued, then they were drowned. So again, Allah in His infinite wisdom asked Prophet Musa to strike the sea with his staff at that crucial time to give us the example and the lesson. That we have to do whatever we can with whatever we have, and then will come the help of Allah. But we have to do our part first. So I'm going to make one more example here from the Quran. One more reminder as an example. That even when, you know, you think you've done everything, you think you're so tired you just can't take it anymore. You've had 6 midterms and all this kind of stuff going on, and it's the last night, you can't study anymore, you can't do anymore. You still have to do what effort you can. And this is with the story of Maryam, peace be upon her, the mother of Isa, peace be upon him. So at the time of his birth, Maryam was she withdrew herself in the desert to have the baby, and it was such a difficult labor, and she was alone, and it was her first baby, and it was so difficult that she even wished she were dead instead of being there, being in labor, and being by herself, and it was that bad. And then the baby was delivered, and she just, you know, she was She was, alone and in a lot of pain, and then just kind of spent. And then what happened after that? I'm going to share with you the ayah from the Quran. The pains of labor drove her to the trunk of a date palm. She exclaimed, "Oh, if only I had died before this time and was something discarded and forgotten." A voice called out to her from under her, "Do not grieve. Your Lord has placed a small stream at your feet." And what's the next sentence in that ayah? Does anybody know? Allah provides her with water to help her, and then what does He tell her to do?
Shake it.
Yes. Shake the trunk of the date palm tree. Shake the trunk of the date palm tree toward you, and fresh ripe dates will fall down upon you. Eat and drink and delight your eyes. And if you should see anyone at all, just say, "I have made a vow of abstinence to the All-Merciful, and so today I will not speak to any human being." So even Maryam, when she was in that state, when she was spent, she was done, she was exhausted, she was tired, she was weak, even then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told her to do something. He provided her with water, and He said, "Shake the trunk of the date palm tree." Now this is a date palm. I don't know if any of you guys have had kids before, maybe not, so that maybe you kind of have some idea about what labor's like. When I had my first child, my daughter, lying on the delivery table, I could not move 1 inch to the right or the left. The nurses had to help me get me off the table to wheel me back to the room. I couldn't do it. So do you honestly think that a woman who's just given birth by herself in that condition, was this thing even going to move if you do this? Even if you have 10 strong men pushing this thing, is it going to move or shake? Is it really her action, lying there in the desert, pushing on this tree, that's going to bring those dates down to her? No, not at all. And you know what? She could have just said, "What? That's not going to do anything. I can't even move. What's this going to do? I'm not doing it. I'm tired. I just had the baby. I'm not doing that." So if she refused, or if she said, "I can't," or if she didn't believe that her effort would do anything, I don't know. There wouldn't be a lot of Christians around, I guess you could say that. What kind of a command? And just imagine that. And it seems futile. It seems like, why? It seems like nothing is going to happen if I do this. I can't move this tree. I can't do anything. I can't even help myself. I can't feed my baby. I can't do whatever. And yet, Allah caused the dates to fall from the tree. Allah caused the dates to fall from the tree with that small effort of hers. She obeyed. She did what she was asked. She gave it the effort, and that happened. So again, the lesson is preserved for humanity. Whatever you can do, in whatever state, even if you're tired and exhausted, you still put that little effort in, even if you think it's not going to make any difference, and Allah will reward you, inshallah, with your sincerity. He will make it a success. So the last verse from the Quran that I want to remind us about is from Surah 13, Ayah 11. Allah does not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. Right? Allah does not change the condition of a people until we change what is in ourselves. And the first part of changing ourselves is to purify our intentions first, right? To make sure that we are sincere in our heart, and that we are sincere as witnesses before Allah, and that we want to do the right thing, and then we put forth the effort or the work into doing the right thing. Don't worry about the results. Don't worry about the outcome. Worry about your own sincerity, and then worry about doing whatever you think you can do with the skills that Allah has given you, and then put the rest into the hand of Allah, and let Allah bring out the benefit from it. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We've talked a little bit from the Quran about just examples all throughout history of Allah expecting us to do work and Allah expecting us to do what we can. So now I'm going to look a little bit into history, and it's a tough time for Muslims in America right now. A lot of people feel kind of really discouraged, especially after September 11, 2001. Things have not been the same in this country, and people just feel like, gosh, it's a bad time, and I kind of wish I wasn't here, or maybe I wish I was sometime else, or maybe just I wish. But if we want to change things for ourselves and for our families as we grow up, we can, but we need to put that effort in. And I thought it might be interesting to look back a little bit at history and kind of look at the history of other groups in our country, because there are different groups in this country that have had difficult times, right? And their conditions have changed over time. And Allah has tested different peoples in many different ways. Sometimes He picks the action of one person or one small group of people, and He uses that action, presumably done with sincerity, to change the condition of the people. So I think these are things that we can also take part in, because it changes the condition of individuals and it changes the condition of nations. So let's look a little bit at American history. So another group that has faced challenges and injustices in our country, right, in America, is the African American community, right? Obviously. How many people know about Jim Crow laws and things like that? You guys are, I'm sure, pretty familiar. Sometimes when you give this talk to your parents, they're not as familiar because they don't know as much about American history as you guys do. But just to remind people, Jim Crow laws, for people who are not familiar, were laws in the United States that were enacted between 1876 and 1965. They mandated the separation of white people and black people. Now, I hate to call people white people and black people, but I guess you understand what I mean in terms of kind of how people divided, by the way people looked and by their skin color, although, again, we have an issue with the terms. But in public schools, public places, public transportation, even restrooms, restaurants, people could not be in the same area if they were white or black, and that resulted in inferior accommodation for like black people, or the term they used at the time was colored people. Okay? And generally, the Jim Crow laws that were remaining were overruled by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and then the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So we're basically mid-60s and before. And I was born like just a little bit after that. I mean, I'm sure you guys were born much, much later, but still within the living memory of many, many people. I'm not that old, in our nation and really alive today, who lived when these were actually laws. And you can see some of the pictures. This is like 50 years ago. In our country, 50 years ago, in many areas in America, the experience of many people who are alive today. Here are some of the actions that were legal. And you can look like, these are just some of the images where, colored people, like here's a waiting room, whites only. Now there's a water fountain area, so you've got water fountain availability for people with white skin, you've got water fountain availability for people who have colored skin, and also you can kind of look at how the fountains even look different beside each other. I mean, one looks like it's a little bit more time and effort into making it and cleaning it up than the other. But some of the actions that were against the law were 50 years ago in our country for white people and black people to be served food in the same room at a restaurant. That was illegal. If they were served in the same restaurant, then you couldn't eat at the same tables or the same lunch counters unless people came in through different doors and that there was a 7-foot-high barrier between them. So that was even written in the law. Unless it was 7 feet high, the barrier, you couldn't have people eating in the same restaurant who were like black and white. They couldn't enter public places through the same doors. They couldn't even play pool together, like billiards. That's a law. Black people and white people cannot play billiards or pool together. They were not allowed to intermarry. Interracial marriage was illegal in this country. They couldn't go to school together. It was illegal for white people and black people to travel in the same train car. Even to be buried in the same part of the cemetery. Even after death, the injustice did not stop. So these were times of great injustice and challenge for our country. And at times like these, we have examples from people that we can gain inspiration and strength. And we learn about them in our history too, that when faced with a challenge, some people chose to stand up and make a difference. Most of the time, they're like everyday people, not extraordinary people, not people who were born, groomed to be great, but people who, when the opportunity presented themselves, instead of sitting down and saying, this is not for me, I'm not doing it, they chose to stand up. And they chose to do something. They chose to do whatever they could to make a difference. And Allah took those actions and changed the condition of their people, of this people. So one thing that's always impressed me about the civil rights movement in America has been the way that everyday people, not just heroes and heroines, stood up to make a difference. And I wanted to share with you an excerpt from Martin Luther King Jr.'s writings when he was jailed in Albany, Georgia in 1961. He was accompanied by many others who were also nonviolently protesting the injustices of segregation, and like a lot of people went to jail willingly as part of their protest, right? As opposed to accepting the status quo. And he wrote, this is Martin Luther King Jr., "I shall never forget the experience of seeing women over 70, teenagers, and middle-aged adults, some with professional degrees in medicine, law, and education, some simple housekeepers and laborers, crowding the jail cells. This development was an indication that the Negro would not rest until all barriers of segregation were broken down. The South had to decide whether it would comply with the law of the land or drift into chaos or social stagnation. One must search for words in an attempt to describe the spirit of enthusiasm and majesty engendered in the next mass meeting. On that night, when 700 Negro citizens were finally released from prison, out of the jails came those men and women, doctors, ministers, housewives, all of whom had joined ranks with the gallant student leadership in an exemplary demonstration of nonviolent resistance to segregation." So he highlights the actions of everyday people, the true heroes of the American South, who, when they had the choice to stand up against injustice, they stood up instead of sat down. They didn't turn their faces away, but they did something. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the gifts that they offered to him and he accepted their righteousness and goodness, and he changed the condition of the people on the backs of those who stood and did something. Sometimes Allah, as we talked about, sometimes Allah uses one action, one small action to change the condition of a people. Like what did we talk about in the beginning? What was one small action that we talked about from the prophets?
Bringing out their efforts.
Yeah, but like Prophet Musa, right? What did Allah ask him to do? Musa, with the Red Sea and the...
Tap.
Yeah, so one small action, like one little thing, tap the sea. So sometimes Allah uses even little things that people do to make a big change. It was Thursday, December 1st, 1955, when Rosa Parks got on the Cleveland Avenue bus at Court Square that day to go home in Montgomery, Alabama. And for those of you who didn't know, in the 1950s, black people were not allowed to sit, they had to sit in the back of the bus, and white people and black people were not allowed to sit in the same row. So when she got on the bus, it wasn't even like she was trying to sit in the front. She was sitting in a row in the bus, and then a white person came on, and the only place that was open was in the same row beside her. So for this white person to sit down there, she wasn't even allowed to sit there. It wasn't like he was taking her seat or anything like that. She just wasn't even allowed to be in the same row, okay? And on December 1st, 1955, she refused to give up her seat on that bus to clear the row for a white person to sit down. She was arrested, and this caused the African American community to rally around her and boycott the buses, which was the Montgomery bus boycott. And that eventually led to the buses becoming integrated. So it was Rosa Parks' courage and actions that were very symbolic and seen as a turning point that sparked the civil rights movement in America. And in her autobiography, she writes about that day. People always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired, but that isn't true. I was not tired, physically or no more tired than I usually was at the end of a working day. I was not old, although some people have an image of me as being old then. I was 42. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in. And because of the actions of Rosa Parks and many other people from many different backgrounds and ethnicities who stood to fight injustice, the condition of the people changed. And so now, 50 years later, in America, we have elected our first African-American president, right? Twice, even. So things will change, inshallah, if we make the effort to change things. And we need not to be discouraged by whatever times or things are around us, because we've been through this before. I thought it might be interesting to you. I'm going to share you some more slides that actually go back a little bit farther in America's history about other ethnic groups. I think many of us are probably familiar with the injustices for the African American community in America. I think we're familiar with that. But back in the 1800s, there are other groups that faced a lot of injustice. And I'm going to show you some slides, but I want to ask you, let's see, there's one particular community that I'm going to share with you, and they are, like my kids are 1/4 this ethnicity. So let's see if you can guess. There's another group that faced a lot of injustice. I'm going to show you some cartoons that were kind of in the dominant public sphere from the 1800s. And they are of an ethnic group that, again, it's interesting for me because my kids are 1/4 this ethnicity. What do you think it is?
Irish.
I said Irish. Okay, you guys must know my husband, right? Oh, you don't? Okay, Irish. You're exactly right. The Irish. Yeah, his mom has got carrot red hair and freckles and complete Irish descent. None of the kids got orange hair, though. I guess the dark jeans kind of trump the light stuff. But anyway, so these are images from the 1800s. And it's really interesting because these cartoons were mainstream images that were accepted in American culture in about the 1860s to 70s, about 140 years ago. Now, if you remember, in Ireland in the mid-1800s, there was a lot of immigration, a lot of Irish immigrants who came to the United States. What was happening in Ireland at that time that caused all these immigrants to come? Do you remember? Something happened in Ireland that made all these immigrants come.
Potato famine?
Yep, exactly, the potato famine. So these people were really, really poor, right? They're dirt poor and they're coming to escape famine. And so people would put up signs, Nina, they're called Nina signs, no Irish need apply. I mean, just blatantly out there. And if you look at the, I don't know if there's a laser pointer or something here, but if you look at that image, on the top, it says, eggs. It says, don't walk away from there. Right here. I'll show you this here. Irish American dynamite skunk. So here's a picture of an Irish American bred in the United States. Then you can look at how they've got the facial features, pointy eyebrows, you know, kind of the thick Neanderthal type features there. And then on the bottom here it says the most recently discovered wild beast. And that's how they referred to these Irish immigrants. I'll point it out over here too as well. So they've got this Irish person, this is how they're depicting them. And these are like cartoons that may have run in the newspapers bred in the United States, Irish American dynamite skunk on the top of this, this cage. And then you can see kind of the facial features and the pointy ears of how they're depicting this Irish person. And then the most recently discovered wild beast, and that's how they ran these. Okay, here's another one. Contrasted faces. Look on this picture and then on that, Shakespeare. So this would run in a paper too. So you've got Florence Nightingale, the image of beauty, white American, Anglo-Saxon Protestants, womanhood, and then you've got beside her Bridget McBruiser. Now, you know, Irish, like they have Mick in front of their names, right? So here's what Irish women look like, and that's what non-Irish women, I guess American women look like. Look on this picture and then on that. I mean, do you even need to be told anything else? Like, look how they're depicted. And Bridget McBruiser is the name that they do. I mean, they're just almost kind of funny now, but these were, you know, these were comics that you would see. And like, I mean, you can certainly think of comics that are like cartoons that have depicted the Muslim American community or the Arab American community or others. And, you know, you kind of almost can sense kind of the reflection of kind of these types of images. Okay, I love this one. This is by Thomas Nass, and this was, again, a pretty popular image. Now, what do you see in this picture? Tell me what you see. What's happening? Does anybody want to say? Has anyone seen this cartoon? Okay, what's happening?
They're being thrown to the alligators.
Okay, so there's somebody here, some American man, right? And he's defending who? Yeah, his children, his family. So somebody's attacking the families in America. Someone is attacking the children, right? They're alligators. They're alligators. And if you look on the buildings, you've got the Capitol. These alligators are, you know, the Capitol is at risk, is being threatened. And if you look on this building over here, it says public school. It says school. So our schools are being threatened. So what is this threat that's coming onto the shores and attacking our families and the Capitol and the public school? You can see this is school right up there in the middle. What are these alligators? What do they mean? They're bishops. They're the clergy of the Catholic Church. So do you see how the bishop's hat? I put the alligator on his side. So like this is an image of the bishop in their traditional hats, right? And then here's the alligators, the bishops, who are coming to attack America. Do you see that? So you've got the traditional bishop's hat, which is, again, the symbol of the Catholic clergy. And then you can see this is actually a clergy. This is a Catholic bishop who's being depicted as an alligator who's coming on to American shores to threaten America. So again, you can see that they're all bishops. So there was a great fear of Catholicism at the time. It wasn't just like ethnicity, it was also religion. And I never knew that America was so afraid of another religion besides Islam. But these pictures and stuff clearly show that there was a real fear of Catholics and Catholicism 1,800 years ago, 140 years ago. And when President Kennedy, who was a Catholic, the first Catholic president, became president, there was a big uproar. It was very difficult because people thought, oh, he's going to respond to the Pope. He's going to be answering to the Pope. He's not going to really be able to be the president. And there was just a lot of prejudice, a lot of pushback. So these kind of images, I mean, they really made me think when I saw them, because it's like, wow, as Muslims, we're not the only people who've gone through this in this country. And yet, Allah has taken the actions of different people and changed the condition of different peoples, even in our own country throughout the ages. And so by these, we can take heart. Inshallah, someday, not too long in the future, by our actions, we'll be looking at these pictures, from the Arab American community, the Muslim American community that show up in our newspapers today. And we'll be like, I can't believe they printed that. That is so crazy. It's like funny, because who would think that? Inshallah, if we do our part, that will be what happens with us as well. One more cartoon here. The great fear of the period, that Uncle Sam may be swallowed by foreigners. So Uncle Sam is a depiction of who? I'm sure you guys know. I have to ask your parents this stuff because they don't know who Uncle Sam is, but obviously U.S., right? A depiction of the country. And then you've got, what ethnicity is on the right? The Chinese, and who are on the left? The Irish, the leprechaun, right? The symbol of the Irish. So between the Chinese and the Irish coming to America, it doesn't look like America's really going to survive, does it? I mean, again. So these are kind of some of the common thoughts and feelings and things like that that we have had in the past. So it's going to take effort to change things, but we need to be active to create the change that we want. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks of us is not more than we can do, right? Does He ever put a burden on our souls that is greater than we can bear? No. He asks us to do whatever we can with whatever He has given us to make a difference. It depends on the time that we live in, it depends on our situation in history, and it depends on our circumstances, and it depends on the particular gifts that we've been given. Nobody here is alike. Nobody here can contribute the same thing. Everyone has their own unique gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And to be active just means to use the gifts you've been given for the sake of Allah. And you use your own skills and your own talents and whatever you can do, and you contribute in your own way. And inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will use that to make a difference. We each were put here as Muslims in 2013 America for a reason. And we have the ability to make a difference, and we each need to kind of find the path that fits us to best serve Allah and the community. So some people might ask, well, how do you know what you're supposed to do? Like, what path should I take? Like, how can I help, or what can I do? Like, I don't have this skill, or I don't have that skill. And inshallah, what feels right, because Allah has given you those gifts, you'll kind of know when you do it, because you'll know it's something that you're passionate about, or something that you like to do, or something that really fires you up, or something that you say, yes, I have the skills, I can do this, or I can develop these skills, and I can do this. So you got to look inside. Don't let other people tell you, oh, you're supposed to do this, and you're supposed to do that. You can take other people's advice, but listen to your heart, listen to your soul, and pray for guidance, and then ask Allah, how can I use the gifts that you've given me? How can I use what you've made me as to make a difference for you? And I usually recommend that people try to volunteer in the community kind of in two different spaces. One is in the Muslim community, like within the community, whether it's at the masjid or for the MSA or for something that the Muslim community does. Be active in the community to make the community strong. And also pick some place in the larger community to volunteer. At, if you have a family, like at a school or something, at the homeless shelter, or reading at the library, or at a hospital, or something like that. Just find some place in the larger community. Because Muslims need to be seen, and Muslims need to be seen doing good for the greater good. So don't just work with the MSA, but also, when people are serving food or people are, anything that you feel passionate about, go out and do that and help that also be part of your contribution. Some people ask, well, the government's not Muslim or this organization's not Muslim. Am I really allowed to even help, or is that okay? And if you look in the Quran, one of the examples that's given for us is the story of Prophet Yusuf, right? So Prophet Yusuf in a non-Muslim land with non-Muslim, owners or rulers and everything, he asked to be put in charge of the grain, right? He knew with his skills and talents and what Allah has given him that he could manage the grain and the food for the entire country during those times of famine. And he was put in that position, and he managed that successfully. So that's a great example of people working hard for a greater entity that wasn't like a Muslim country or something, and yet, it made a lot of difference and was very positive. So I want to kind of just, at this point, ask you guys for suggestions. So maybe some of your colleagues or your classmates, they may not know opportunities to volunteer. So I want you to kind of just maybe share things that maybe you've done or that you think you could do, or maybe ideas that you've had to give other people ideas about ways that you might be able to volunteer, or even opportunities on campus or things like that that might make a difference. So I'll kind of open it up, and maybe if people can just kind of share ideas that they have about things they might like to do. And I can start it off. I remember when I was in medical school, there were, the hospice organization is like people who are dying, and you could volunteer with people to go in and just visit with somebody who was elderly or had cancer and was in the hospice program. So you just go and visit with them. So we're used to visiting people, right? And many of us have kind of older, there's still a few more slides, I think. What do you guys have? What have you done, or what have you thought you might want to do? Just give everybody some ideas. Like even for on campus, is there any place that you guys have maybe contributed on campus that other people might like to know about? Any ideas? Okay. So how about anything you might want to do? Even areas of what you might want to do.
We actually have a lot of service opportunities through MSA. So we do every Sunday we have get together, make sandwiches, lunch bags for the homeless.
Okay, awesome.
There's blood drives that we volunteer to help at.
Okay.
Community gardens.
Okay.
What else?
And do people pretty much know about what to do and where to show up and kind of things like that?
We announce it.
Okay.
So.
Okay, awesome. And you were going to add?
That's what I was.
Okay, awesome. So the MSA does a lot of stuff too. Great. Anybody else? Any other ideas? All right, so yeah, you'll have to give everybody the homework, I guess, of coming up with two opportunities like on campus that you can volunteer, and then maybe bring them in, you could pool them. Maybe if everybody just looked in kind of 2 places that might need volunteers, and then you could just submit them on maybe one master list or something, then you could just kind of see what's available. Because sometimes we have more time, sometimes we have little time. I remember when I was on campus, there was, like, people could read textbooks for the blind. And so you could just stop in between classes and just like read an assignment for people, like students who were blind, and you just taped it. And then they could, and just something that took a very short time and yet could make a lot of difference in somebody's education. So, I'm sure there are lots of opportunities like that. So maybe, that's something you guys can think about doing in terms of creating like a list in addition to the MSA stuff.
I feel like picking something that you enjoy is important.
Mhm.
Like the more you enjoy it, the more dedicated you are.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, in my high school, I volunteered for a Columbus Marathon.
Okay.
Like my school had a booth to pass like cups of water or Gatorade to people running the marathon. That was something I could really enjoy and I had a good time doing. So I think picking something that you enjoy makes your time and effort more beneficial for what you're volunteering.
Absolutely. And you also learn a lot. Like you can develop a lot of skills and you can